commission meeting for this evening, May 3rd, 2023. I call this meeting to order. Sheena, would you take roll, please?
Yes. Russell?
Here.
Zakara?
Here.
Kemp?
Here.
Senf?
Here.
Christ?
Here.
And Mulligan.
Here. Thank you. Let's see. Sheena, can you confirm we are in compliance with the Iowa Open Meetings Law?
Yes, we are.
Okay, very good. All right, commissioners, in front of you are our minutes from our previous meeting on April 5th, 2023. I would entertain first any modifications, and if none, a motion for approval.
A motion to approve the April 5th, 2023 minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Sheena, you would take roll?
Christ?
Aye.
Senf?
Aye.
Zakaro?
Aye.
Kemp? Aye. Russell?
Aye.
Mulligan.
Aye. Okay, those minutes as submitted are approved. All right, so on our agenda this evening, we've got two public hearings, no action items. Just so I can get it straight ahead of time, our next city council meeting is 5/15, is that right?
Yeah, May 15th.
Yes.
Okay, May 15th.
May 15th.
Thank you.
Correct.
All right, so the way that the public hearing will work is we'll ask you to come on up and state your address, what it is that you're asking, name, of course, and address, and what you're asking from the commission. And then we'll have you take a seat. We'll open it up for public hearing. And then we'll close it at that point and move right on down the line. This first item, I am actually going to recuse myself, and I will turn it over to our vice chair.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Well, the first public hearing is a proposed rezoning for a property on the Northwest Arterial where they're asking to rezone from agriculture to planned unit development, planned residential zoning. With that, I'll open the public hearing and ask if the applicant wants to make a presentation.
Thank you. Jim Gantz, 12241 Forest Meadow Drive, Dubuque, Iowa 52001. First of all, I want to thank the commission for the courtesy of from the last meeting where my rezoning request was tabled. There was two outstanding issues at that time. It was sanitary sewer connection, whether there was sufficient capacity for my development, and the second one was access, what the proper access should be. I requested full access at my station 73 plus 00. That's what my concept plans included. I believe I have a legal right to full access at that point. That's what I was requesting. The city, I received a response, so at your urging to, offer me the courtesy of a prompt response on those two issues, I did actually receive a call from Gus Ahoyas the very next day to tell me that he had completed the sanitary sewer review and found sufficient capacity to handle my development. So I actually was a bit surprised to find that my agenda item was on the agenda for tonight, because I didn't expect it was going to be that quick of a response to the access question. So I sincerely hope that you have thoroughly reviewed the staff report and the engineering report for my development. So, the staff report is recommending that you table my request again, and that I come back with a revised concept plan for right in, right out only to my 152 unit multifamily development, $25 to $30 million development. So the engineering report, which I sincerely, again, hope you've read, looks at all the various options for access to my property. You know, they've looked at the lighted intersection, they've looked at a roundabout, they've looked at a J intersection, and they've looked at a right-in, right-out intersection. And they have concluded that right-in, right-out only access to my development is the proper way to go. So just ask yourself the question, if I built 152 units on my development with right-in, right-out access only, would you rent an apartment from me? I'm telling you, no way. There's no way you're gonna, if you're at JFK heading down to Central Avenue, heading east, and you wanted to turn and enter to get to your apartment, you would have to go all the way down from JFK to the intersection at US 3 and 32 Central Avenue, make a U-turn, go back up the hill, and then turn right into my development. Okay, now, if you want to go to Central Avenue and you're going to leave my development, you're renting there now. Okay, you want to go down to Central Avenue. So you're going to turn right, you're going to go up to JFK, and then you're going to, hope that you don't get hit, and you're going to make a U-turn there. Then you're going to go back down the hill to Central Avenue so that you can turn right and go into town. So I got to tell you that recommendation insults my intelligence. It does. I'm sorry, but to insinuate that I should spend that kind of money for that kind of access, I'm sorry, but that's poor planning on the verge of negligence. You know, that's just, I can't tell you how silly I think that recommendation is. Okay, now I have said all along that I believe I have a legal right to a full intersection there. That's what my patent says. Now, the city in their report, you know, they've got the city attorney's opinion, and they're basically, they're going to challenge what my direct access really means. So, you know, all I can tell you is that, you know, they've classified in the comprehensive plan, they've called my property green space or parkland. I didn't buy green space or parkland from the DOT. I certainly paid a price for that property, buying it back from the DOT for development. If there was going to be, you know, the city is arguing, oh, it's farm access, Class C. That's what it was, that's what's in the grading plan. Okay, then how come IDOT, when it came to reoffer the property, the excess, why? Now, I've still got the letter. We had this property independently appraised, and this is what we want for it. I paid development price. I did not pay for parkland. I did not pay for farmland. I paid for development property. Same as on the south side. Switch Homes had the same thing. It's really interesting to note because in the offer to sell this Mazzina Farm South, which we've subsequently sold to Switch Homes, when the offering document, I just looked at it tonight, in the offering document, it's got right in there, you know, direct access to station 7300. Well, guess what? The patent comes and it says no access to US 32. okay? The Northwest Arterial. I kicked it right back at them and said, now, wait a minute, guys, that's not what the offer said. That's not what I agreed to purchase. Fix it. They did fix it. But I've still got both patents that I would love to show to you, so don't tell me that we bought excess property with no access or, direct access, and that means just a connection to either the eastbound lane or the westbound lane, but not both. Don't tell me that. That's not true. So, here's where I see it going. Okay, I don't want to get into a battle with the city over what does direct access means. I don't need to be involved in something like that. But the city has to decide. So it is so obvious. It is so obvious what is going on here. The city has gone out of their way to not allow another intersection from the stretch between JFK and Central Avenue. Again, read the report. They're calling, this was designed to be a limited access highway. Well, I'll remind you, the whole stretch was originally designed to be a limited access highway. I'm talking, so they're calling out four phases. US 20 to Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania to Asbury, Asbury to JFK, JFK to Central Avenue. 4 sections. All right, they've already conceded, oh, well, yeah, we did allow more. We didn't keep it a limited access on phases 1, 2, and 3. But guess what? We're adamant about keeping phase 4 a limited access highway. That's what this is all about. So the city has decided that they would rather keep it a limited access and stick to the original plan on only the 4th part, rather than work with me to do my development. So they've chosen. So as I see it, they've got 2 choices. They can go ahead and preserve that idea and not allow access for my development. I can tell you that I cannot and will not do this development with right-in, right-out only access. Clearly, that's a death knell. Nobody in their right mind would do that development, spend that kind of money with right-in, right-out only access. Now, the city attorney, she says, oh, well, there's this case in Minnesota where the direct access, that meant just connection to either the eastbound or the westbound lane. But I will challenge you. You show me one 152-unit development with right-in and right-out only access. You won't find one. Nobody's going to do that. You won't find one. So the recommendation is to table. Now, you could decide, let me just back up a little bit. This whole idea of not wanting another intersection on the final phase, JFK to Central Avenue, it goes back quite a ways, okay? Because I can tell you that there was a gentleman, this is about 10 years ago, who approached us, I think it was Chris Spahn was his name, and married to a relation of the neighboring property, not the property Switch Homes, but the one to the east. He wanted to do a development. Well, we sat down with Bob Schiesel at that time. Bob came up, he showed a plan. He showed a plan extending North Grandview through this neighboring property, through our property, and intersecting with the Northwest Arterial in a full intersection. So when I, most recently, about just prior to negotiating with Switch Homes for the sale of Mazzina South, now they're saying intersection on the Northwest Arterial for that development. They're telling Matt Mulligan at that time, no, we don't want a full intersection there. He's now, when I quizzed him on it, he said, oh, that's off the table. That's off the table. And then immediately questioning my right to legal access. So, when the Switch Homes development came up and the preliminary plat and the access proposal with the primary access being through Tiffany Court, I brought it to the city's attention immediately, because they were originally, the first preliminary plat for Switch Homes development was a right-in, right-out at Station 73+00, which would obviously have then changed my access to right-in, right-out only also. I put them on notice immediately with my attorney saying, you are not going to downgrade my access. So, don't tell me that my plans are too little too late. I tried to tell the city early on that, you need to look at this entire development. You need to look at my development, you need to look at Switch Homes development, and there's over 100 acres to the east of Switch Homes that is yet to be developed, going all the way to Olympic Heights, okay? So the proper thing to do would have been to get all of these developers together to decide, okay, what makes the most sense for this development? Let's not do it, let's do it right to begin with. Unfortunately, the city is so intent on not wanting another intersection that they decided, no, we're going to route this traffic through Tiffany Court. Well, I called Matt Mulligan early on, the developer. I called him. I said, Matt, I said, you're struggling with the city, with the neighbors on access to your development. I said, why don't we get you and me and I think it's Dennis Waite and Mike Finnan, who bought the 100 acres to the east. Let's get together. I said, I am willing to participate in the cost of a proper intersection there. I'm willing to do that. It benefits me. Matt says, well, I'll get something scheduled and call you. Well, I don't blame Matt and Switch Homes for going the route they went. It's certainly a lot more economical for their development not to have to participate in the cost of a controlled intersection. So I don't blame them, because the city is saying, this is what we want to do. We don't want another intersection. We don't want another intersection. So they give him this great alternative, route all that traffic through Tiffany Court, and, then you're going to need a secondary access right in, right out at Station 73+00. Well, of course, after I challenged them on that, guess what? The right in, right out gets moved 500 foot west so that it no longer lines up with mine and doesn't make mine a right in, right out anymore. But I'll tell you right now that the plan for Switch Homes, the way it is currently laid out, it's got right in, right out, 500 foot west of mine. And of course, that staff report says, well, if people start shortcutting, in other words, if they turn right and go down to Mr. Gantz's, connection curb cut 500 foot east of that, we might have to, well, first of all, we'll put up a no U-turn sign. And if that doesn't work, we'll close the median. Well, you know what's going to happen when they close the median? We'll see you in court. So I'm just telling you that what do I want from you? I have no problem with you tabling my request. I'm asking you, so I need to go back to the city. The city needs to make up their mind. Okay, are we that adamant about not wanting another intersection? If that's the case, that's fine. I understand that. That's your priority, but you have damaged me in the process. So we're going to need to talk about, proper compensation. So there's either that option or the better option. Let's sit down with Mr. Gantz and with Mr. Mulligan and with Waite and Finnan and discuss how can we make this work for everyone? How can we make this work for everyone? So I think that's all I really wanted to state. I can tell you that as far as the recommendation of table my request and ask Mr. Gantz to revise his conceptual plan to meet the city's recommendation, I can't do that. I am not going to spend that kind of money for a right-in, right-out. That's destined for failure. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any folks from the public that would like to provide input? Please step up to the mic and state your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Eric Lucy. I live at 2736 Tiffany Court, Dubuque, Iowa. Some of you may remember about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I became a kind of de facto representative of about 100 citizens of the Tiffany Court, Bruick, Blasen, and part of 32nd Street. I will tell you this number has grown to more than double that now. And again, I came down more as an observer, but there were some interesting points brought up. So I'll do my best. I don't want to repeat things, but I do want to say, first of all, I'm not an attorney. So some of this legal stuff that may or may not be going on here or there, and I'm not an engineer. But I am a citizen of the community, and again, I'm representing quite a number of people. And I think I have a lot of common sense. I think I can say that. Over a year ago, it was March of last year when this first came to our attention, we stated very clearly, no one is opposing switch homes, okay? So we're still continuing that opinion, all right? The whole thing was the access. We did bring to the attention, because we found out very quickly after this development that the Union Park Plaza, that Mr. Gantz's property now, is in the works. And we're also very fully aware that February of last year, the Ehrlich Farm, which is the property to the east that was discussed, is there for future development as well. It's my understanding there's a 3 to 5 year wait period on that to allow the people who live there to stay there, but somewhere we're already a year into that 3 to 5 year period. So it's just a matter of time before that gets developed as well. And I recall also last year, we were just talking about zoning and not access. There was going to be people talking to come work, hey, we'll work with you. We want to work with the community. And the city, as we all understand and agree, it's been very, very well known, we need more housing. And we have currently 2 property owners in our midst right here. One wants to add 105, I think, homes, another 152. Well, that gets us closer to the goal that the city wants. And I'm not a developer per se, as far as what the other 100 acres directly to the east, but I suspect that will be in excess of 100, homes. So just in this nice area right here, we're talking 350, maybe 400 homes to get us to the goal that the city wants. And again, nobody wants to stop that. Nobody wants to slow that down. Nobody's saying, not in my neighborhood, okay? We're very clear on that. What we're talking about is 2 things: safe and adequate access. So let's first talk adequate, all right? You have two properties directly across from each other, all right? They have the same access point. Why, I mean, again, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an attorney, but common sense tells me, why wouldn't we just make that an intersection right there, and it serves both properties and hopefully the future one as well, and it takes care of any concerns of safe, adequate access going that way. I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, we talk about the intersections, you know, the lights that are on the arterial already, and the one by Holiday Drive, okay, where like the McDonald's and Lena's Thai Bistro and such, everyone should be familiar with that. Well, there's property that's been developed there, and we have a light at that spot. Why? Because as I learned a lot through this process, which I really appreciate, you know, teaching me this stuff. There's a stub street right across the way from there. That farm is eventually going to be developed. So we already have a light there, and we haven't even developed the opposite side of Holiday Drive. So we're now talking about, we have properties going to be developed on both sides. It just makes sense. Put an intersection, a full intersection there, you'll have adequate access. And then let's talk safety. All right? You already heard from Mr. Gantz, and it takes very little to see what's going to happen. People are going to be turning right out of Switch Homes property, going down to 30 or Central, and making a U-turn down there. Probably not the best way to go about it. And then it's going to be the same thing going out there. What are they going to do? Make a U-turn up at JFK if they're coming out of the Union Park Plaza property? That's not safe. And I know we've talked about, I've heard, the truckers don't want another intersection. Well, guess what? That ship sailed years ago, all right? And that 5-mile stretch of the arterial, which we've discussed already, but I think it's important to repeat that 5 miles, the first 3 miles, there's a total of 7 lights. It's the final 2 miles that it goes JFK as a light, and the next mile is 2 miles later, and that's at the bottom of the hill, all right? There's hills going up to Asbury. There's hills going up to Pennsylvania. They're gonna have hills no matter what. If I understand the access to Switch Homes has been moved 500 feet to the west, yes, correct, to the west. If the Union Park Plaza property has the ability to move theirs, well, gosh, you're on an even flatter plane and better sight line. So it's really difficult. I know the city will say, do you know how many calls we get? We don't want another stoplight. Every time I've had a person say that to me, because people will, they're like, they'll bring that up, and I'll say, well, let me ask you a question. How long is the arterial? And they don't know, so I tell them, okay, how many stoplights do we have from Highway 20 to JFK? They guess. You know what they guess? 3 or 4 is what they say. And I was like, nope, let's go through them, and I count them for them. And they're shocked. They're like, really? Oh, I didn't realize that. And then I tell them what the next 2 miles is. And as soon as I do that, they're like, you're right. What's another doggone light or intersection gonna do? That's not gonna hurt anybody. It's gonna help. And for safety purposes, anybody that lives within earshot, which is usually a couple of miles from there, they can hear the vehicles traveling. And I'm telling you, they open it up. They open it up from JFK down to Central, or if they're coming up from Central, up to JFK. Motorcycles, cars, you name it, you can hear them going up. And I don't want to belabor the fact that we've had some deaths as recently in the last year. If there was an intersection there, I can't predict this, or I can't go back and change it. But if there was an intersection there, I think it'd be hard pressed for them to get up to the speed that which they did get. And perhaps, maybe, we'd have 3 more people still living. We want homes. The city wants homes. These 2 developers in this room want homes. Nobody's disputing that. Let's get the homes. Let's, like Mr. Gantz said, I suggested the same thing a year ago because I had an opportunity to visit with the 3 developers, one very briefly, but the others at more length, and say, gosh, why can't we have some collaboration? Get the 3 developers and the city, let's get to talking. I felt so confident, maybe I'm overconfident. Let's get them in a room, let's talk. Smart enough people can figure this out and find a way to collaborate. 2 of the developers said, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. One didn't want, and I understand, doesn't know me personally. I've always said, I'm sure if he and I sat down and had a beer, a cup of coffee together, everything would be fine. We want this to happen. When I say this, all of this stuff, it's going to be good for our community. Let's not make this difficult for these developers. Let's make it right with the developers and make it right for the city. And let's get these people together. I think you have willing participants. I hope you do. And we had recently, my understanding, I don't remember all the details, but there was a collaboration made for the light on, because there's going to be a light in there, new one up on JFK and 32nd Street. And it's my understanding that there's going to be some collaboration with the city and the developer to do that. We already know how to do this stuff. We got some really smart people in this community, some really smart people that work in the city, smart people that volunteer or, their time for these commissions and everything. My gosh. Let's get them all together. Let's make this happen and do it the right way. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience want to make any comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. Let me just go ahead and get this PowerPoint started here. Sorry. So thank you again. So Sheena Moon, Associate Planner. I want to run through some of the details of the project and summarize some of the details outlined in the engineering memo provided in your packets. So I'll start with, I think we're all fairly familiar with where the property is located, so I won't dive into that in great detail. A little bit about the review history. So as you all know, it came before the Zoning Advisory Commission at your April 5th meeting. At that time, we had concerns about site access as well as sanitary sewer connections. And at that point, the commission chose to table to a future meeting. Since then, the engineering department has worked to further evaluate the sanitary sewer capacities as well as the site access. And as Mr. Gantz heard or stated, feedback has been provided to him with regards to the sanitary sewer capacity and then also with this memo specifically regarding the site access. And I'll go through that a little bit more. Again, that memo is attached here. So again, I'm not going to dive into this. Again, this is kind of a recap from our last meeting, but the property was originally part of properties south of the property located south of the Northwest Arterial. Excuse me. The Northwest Arterial was constructed, and long story short, this is a brief summary, divided those two pieces of property by the Northwest Arterial right away. The subject property is approximately 43 acres. It's a vacant lot currently used for crop ground. It does have approximately 2,300 feet of frontage along the Northwest Arterial. It is an irregular shaped piece of property and has quite an elevation change of approximately 135 feet, sloping downhill from the south side along the Northwest Arterial to the north. There's also a 50-foot wide overhead utility easement, which bifurcates the northern and southern portions of the site. And as I mentioned, there are 2 areas of the property currently being utilized for crop ground, which would make for great developable areas on the site. General overview of the zoning history. The property has historically been zoned AG agricultural and again is used for agricultural crop ground currently. So again, to recap the proposed project, this is a six 8-unit apartment buildings. There will be 13 8-unit townhome buildings. And as Mr. Gantz said, a total of 152 units. 292 parking spaces would be provided on the property, both through surface parking as well as garages. And as seen in the original conceptual plan, or in the conceptual plan here, there were 3 points of access that were originally proposed. 2 being emergency access, right-in, right-outs, and then a primary full interchange in the center of the image there. And again, I already mentioned the overhead utility easement, which you can see in yellow here on the image. So let's talk a little bit about the engineering memo. So we'll start with site access. The city engineering department took a good long look and study at the site access. They took a look at a number of things, one of which being the history of the Northwest Arterial and how that has been phased over time. The intention with this phase, which consists of JFK to Central Avenue, is really designed to be a limited access highway. A limited access highway is one in which the points of access or points at which motorists may enter or exit the highway are limited. And so in that instance, and I'm going to read this from the memo, officially the regulated limitations of access are called access control, and it is achieved by regulating public access rights to and from the properties next to the highway. And so in looking at this property again, or this location, again, this section really meant to be limited access. The access to the subject property has been identified as a Type C farm access drive, which is a private access connection with traffic volumes between 1 and 10 trips in a peak hour. And so there are also 2 other classifications that include Type A access, which is greater than 100 trips in a peak hour, and Type B access, which is between 11 and 99 trips in a peak hour. So the original access really intended for, again, that farm access / driveway. The engineering department has hired a consultant. They've worked with MSA Professional Services, and they did take a look at right-in, right-out options. So they studied that at this location. They studied the options of having a half J turn as an alternative. They also studied a signalized intersection and a roundabout intersection. The results of that study, their recommendation is that the access be upgraded from the Type C to a 1 right-in, right-out access with associated acceleration and deacceleration lanes along the Northwest Arterial. Sanitary sewer. So the city did conduct a thorough capacity study of the sanitary sewer at West 32nd Street to verify basically whether or not the sanitary sewer could be from this development and actually also from the Switch development could handle the capacity and the flows. Staff confirmed that there is capacity for the proposed development. And the engineering recommendation is that the gravity collection system, the lift station, and the force main proposed would be privately owned utilities, and that the applicant would coordinate the design and construction of the force main connection to and through the Mosina Farm subdivision with that developer. In summary, and we can certainly dive into some of these details if the commission has questions, but I'm just going to basically say in summary that we agree that some further collaboration would be necessary to make sure that the site access on the conceptual plan is reflecting the city's recommendation. as well as that the sanitary sewer connections be coordinated as necessary with the adjacent developers. And then I just want to highlight again, and I think Wally may have some additional comments, but I just want to highlight again the criteria for the PUD review and approval. And number 2 here really being the key one, that the proposed development is designed to be functionally integrated with existing city streets, storm and sanitary sewer and water service. And so it would be our recommendation that this be tabled so that we could work through some of those remaining issues now with the information that we've been provided, as long as with the applicant. And I'll turn this over to Wally if he has any further comments to add.
Yes, I'd just like to address some comments that were brought up during the public hearing portion, but I just want to provide just a little bit more information. So included in your packet, our engineering department provided a very, very detailed memo with regards to not only the sanitary sewer discussion, which they've done a detailed analysis, which basically says they do have the ability to handle the capacity from the development of 152 units. They'd have to do some coordination with the adjoining subdivision in order to look at that connection they'll go through to feed that sanitary sewer. So the sanitary sewer situation has been addressed. With regards to access, which has been a very large discussion that's brought before us here, and just like what Sheena's mentioned, I feel the city has gone well above and beyond typically what we would do for a planned unit development. I know there's been a lot of discussion about access, and we did hire an engineer that's not a city engineer, a separate independent engineering company to do an analysis. We definitely need housing in our community, no buts about it. And we'd definitely like to see this development continue to go through and be developed. What we did is we did ask, look at different options. What are the feasibilities of different options that we can look at in order to provide access to the site? In the memo, which is very long, and I'm not going to read through the entire thing for you, but we did analyze a roundabout, a J-turn, a signalized intersection, and the right in, right out access points. And I've heard multiple times tonight the word safety. Safety, safety, safety. So I just want to go ahead and kind of read, a couple of analyses that were provided by our traffic engineer, specifically with regards to the right in, right out access, because that's what the recommendation is being proposed from our engineering department. So in the analysis here that's provided by the MSA traffic engineer, he broke down and talked about all the different developments, but I want to just specifically read what's provided here in the right in, right out access paragraph. So based on the description of the proposed developments on the north side of the Northwest Arterial, we looked at trip generation for a 152-unit apartment building. We did an analysis using highway capacity manual methodologies, and the analysis indicate that the side roads would operate at a level service speed during peak hours, which is an acceptable delay of at least 20 seconds per vehicle. We checked the sensitivity of the analysis by assuming that all 152 units had a vehicle either coming or going during the peak hour. So basically during the peak hour, either someone's leaving or coming to one of the units in the facility, which is an extraordinary amount beyond what is normal. So it's very highly unlikely that will happen, but they went to the highest peak operation there. And it's still operated at a level service B. This is the right in, right out access. I anticipate that it would take growth far beyond the available land to make the alternative not operate acceptably. The 150 units would only use approximately 10% of the total capacity of the right in, right out access. This alternative is the safest as it would have the least conflict points. So when we talk about conflict points, we're talking about opportunities where vehicles are crossing each other, where there's opportunities for intersection accidents, where there's crossing paths. So once again, I just want to read that again. This alternative is the safest as it would have the least conflict points. Based on the 85th percent speeds of nearly 63 miles per hour in both directions at this location, so we did do a speed study at the location at the station 73 that's mentioned before. That speed study identified that 63 miles per hour, which is a 50-mile posted right now, 63 miles per hour is the 85th percentile of 85%, are going that speed. Keeping the potential right angle conflicts to a minimum would be preferred to prevent fatal and serious injury crashes Due to those high speeds, I would recommend installing right turn lanes to allow deceleration outside of those through lanes. I'd also recommend offsetting those right turn lanes to help provide the recommended intersection sight distance from the side road. In addition, there are 3 existing median openings along the northwest arterial between JFK Road and Central Avenue. One is west of the proposed intersection and 2 are to the east. With the current speeds and the amount of traffic on the northwest arterial, I would recommend closing those median openings as they pose a potential safety issue. The addition of a right-in, right-out intersection will likely increase the chances of vehicles using those median openings to make U-turns. U-turns can be more safely made at the upstream and downstream signalized intersections if necessary. And then we go into the cost association with, for instance, the right-in, right-out access is $250,000. The other options are millions. So what we're saying is the development, if they meet the right-in, right-out access, could still proceed and go ahead with that. So I just want to bring that to the attention for that. There's a couple other things that were brought up specifically. I just want to let you know the current zoning of the property is agriculture. The current future land use map has identified it as public open space park land. In order to get a rezoning has to go through this commission and on the city council. You're not entitled to a rezoning. There's a process that we have to go through, and that's the process we're going through right now. I just want to make it noted that in 1995, the property was identified land use-wise, public and open space. 2006 comprehensive plan, the property was identified as public open space, parkland. 2017, the property was identified as public space, open parkland. There was a patent granted for a direct access in which we have the Northwest Arterial plans that show that access to be a type C access, which is a farm access road. That patent that was granted for that access was done in 2007. So I just want to reiterate that in 1995, this is already public and open space. So when that patent was granted, that property was already identified future land use as public open space. That doesn't mean that it was approved to be a development, doesn't mean it was approved to be anything else. It was identified that at that time. So we're going through the process right now, right? We're going to the Zoning Advisory Commission, City Council in order to look at the development. Based on the recommendation that's being provided, we had some conversations about a development on the south side of the road, about moving their access 500 feet up the roadway. Those discussions were brought up for multiple things, and it was just mentioned tonight. It's flat, there's a better site visibility. You heard that from one of the individuals that spoke tonight. The other discussion was also grading and availability to the development. The property has been identified as a limited access roadway. That means we're going to control access to this development. We need to be able to have the traffic and the flow to come through on the Northwest Arterial. Previous discussions that we had about this, multiple intersections on the existing portion of our Northwest Arterial, we've heard a lot of conversations with regards to that. We've also heard, and just was indicated tonight and has been received to the engineering department, individuals contact the engineering department says, I do not want a full intersection on the Northwest Arterial. So when we look at this development, and if you read through the memo, which is public record and anybody can request it, it very detailed lays out what's before you and what the city will accept for access to the property. It goes into the history of how the Northwest Arterial was created, the multiple phases it was going through, the process to go through to get access approved for the property. And then also we have our attorney's opinion that's located in the document, which we talked about this discussion of what direct access is. We do cite a case in Minnesota because there is no case law that's been brought up in the state of Iowa with regards to it. But all the documents that we provided to and has been reviewed and analyzed by our own engineering department, and we've hired a consultant to look at it, all point to us looking at the development and say, if this property is developed, we're looking at a right-in, right-out access only to the property. No full interchange, no J-turn, no roundabout. That's the recommendation. We're requesting you table this application, and we have the opportunity to go back and talk with Mr. Gantz to further discuss what the options will be. But right now, as of right now, if the request is going to go before the city council, Unless it incorporates a right-in, right-out access as recommended by our engineering department, the planning services department staff's recommendation would be to deny that request. And we can move it forward to the city council. However, I'd like to have it step back and have those conversations so we can come up with a conceptual development plan that meets the requirements before us. We're not here to prohibit development. That is the decision of the developer to decide if he wants to proceed with it. We have information here that says a right-in, right-out access will work for the property. And currently, right now, the property is owned ag and public open space. So if we go through and rezone the process and we move forward to the city council, that's at the discretion of the commission. But I would highly recommend tabling it so we can further the discussions, or I would recommend denying the request unless there's a right-in, right-out access provided for the property. That's all I have.
No, the public hearing is closed, Mr. Gantz. Thank you. Any letters or calls of support or opposition to the rezoning?
No, we've not had any.
All right, we'll open it up to discussion by the commission members.
So Sheena and Wally, I might need some clarification a little bit here then. So regarding if we do table it versus what would happen if we did go ahead and proceed to rezone the property? As I stated in our last meeting, I sympathize with Mr. Gantz. I understand his frustration. It sounds like he has a legal standing with his access. Also, as Mr. Lucy said, I am not a lawyer. I'm not an engineer. I hopefully have a little common sense. And I agree, too, that I don't know why the city cannot sit down with these developers in this area and figure out a solution. I don't know why it's taking so long. I'm happy the sanitary sewer. I agree with Mr. Gantz. So based on the traffic engineering with the right in, right out, okay, it's safe to go in and out, but like Mr. Gantz said, if I'm living there, I don't know if I'd want to live there. If I have to drive up to JFK or I have to drive down to Central and make a U-turn to get wherever I'm going, I can't imagine that's going to be very safe. So can you clarify for me, if we don't table it and we do go ahead and pass this, is there some way we can expedite it? Because I know that's not our job as the commission to say, okay, we want Mr. Gantz and Switch Homes and potential this other developer to sit down by X date and come up with roughly some sort of solutions or some different potential solutions for this.
Sure. So a couple things to answer your first question about if you can just go ahead and vote on it, move it forward. If you vote on it to move it forward, it'll be the conceptual plan that's provided in your packet. That will go on the city council. And expediting, we have to follow the notification requirements, so that would go on to the city council on May 15th. And the city council would review the rezoning request before them with regards to what's attached as the conceptual development plan. If, for instance, you wanted to approve it with a recommendation that the access only be right in, right out only, that would be something that we would have to go back to the developer, Mr. Gantz, and we would have to sign a memorandum of agreement in order to move that forward. I think it's pretty clear tonight that Mr. Gantz has kind of indicated that that is not an option for him. He'd rather have a full intersection for that. Your other option would be to table the application and allow staff to be able to meet with Mr. Gantz to have more of a discussion with regards to the access. However, when we talk about sitting down and having solutions with the developments, we have a development review team that reviews subdivisions and plans. We also have an engineering department that looks at access to the property. Not only have we looked at access to this, we've spoken with the DOT with regards to the development as well. So when we looked at the development to the south, we discussed conversations about traffic brought up. We did a traffic study. We did a traffic analysis. We did a site distance requirement. A lot of things that were involved with that development to the south side, that all came through. On the north side, we've gone well above and beyond typically what we normally would do with this review in order to provide some information, to provide that detail, and that takes time. That's why we're looking at this, because we were looking at creating 152 units at this location, which we if we look at the comp plan, we want infill development, we want housing, okay? We want to make sure it's safe, though. So based on the information that's before us and what's provided in the staff report, staff's still recommending that, you table the application. But if you do decide to move it forward, you probably are not going to move forward with any recommendations. We'll have a vote, and that vote will then be forwarded on to the city council for their consideration at the May 15th meeting.
So I just have a question. So we don't have authority to request that we approve it with the traffic light. I completely understand. Again, I'm not an engineer. I'm an average person, and everything they said makes sense. The stoplight is not ideal, but there's so many on the other stretch. It's what's one more is the way I look at it. And again, I know it's not ideal, but do we have the authority to request that it be approved with a traffic light?
So just like with the recommendation of a right-in, right-out, you can make a motion to recommend approval with a traffic light. If that's the recommendation that comes before us, once again, we'll have to, typically we ask the applicant to say, are they okay with that condition at the meeting before you make that motion? And then we'd have to do a memorandum of agreement that they have to sign saying they're going to agree to that condition before we take it on to the city council.
Okay.
So you do have the authority to place conditions. You definitely have the authority. But when conditions get placed, the applicant or the developer has to agree to those conditions before we move it on to the council.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to say the exact location of the traffic light. So if it's at Mr. Gantz's area, or if it's 500 feet west where the Switch Homes ones is? Or can it be kind of vague?
You can be kind of vague with that. So it's totally at your discretion. What I recommend is that you guys talk amongst yourselves to decide if that's the route you want to go through. Someone can always make a motion, and if there's not a second and it fails for a second, then we can reintroduce another motion. So there's multiple ways you can approach this. So
my concern is if we have the recommendation of the city engineering department and their consultant that right in, right out is the way to go, wouldn't we expect the engineering department to recommend against the rezoning at the council meeting?
So all the information that's being provided before you will go on to the city council. There'll be another public hearing, just like this one. The applicant will be able to get up and speak. Information will be provided from what the commission's recommendation is. Another public hearing will be able to be provided to that, and information could be provided to them with regards to that. I think it's very clear that the engineering's recommendation is that it's for right-in, right-out access only. So that information will be relayed onto the city council.
I have a few simple questions and maybe some less simple ones. So this is just me being a little bit new to this. Like, what is a J-turn? I couldn't tell from the diagram or from the description what that is.
Yeah, I don't know if can you pull up the diagram?
I can't.
So a J-term actually is, and I'm not a traffic engineer to say the least, but we have a diagram. We'll be able to show it to you. It's attached to the, yep. You go back up. It's at the end of the memo.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. I think you need to keep going up.
Not seeing it.
So while she's pulling up, there's a diagram that a J-turn is basically, for instance, if you were to exit a right-in, right-out, you take a right-out, you go down and then you'll turn and you'll go into basically a left turn lane that takes you through a median that turns you back around, and it's a protected left. In the median area, that's a curve that protects you to turn and get right back on. It's not typically directly right across. So if you scroll scroll in on that one. So this would be a J-term. So for instance, do you see that little bulb, the little area that's located there that's highlighted? You'd come out, you take a right out, you get into the roadway, and you can see there's multiple lanes there in order to help with the access. You'd cut across and you'd go into this curve, and it's basically a protect a left that turns. There's a bulb there that goes on the other side of the road because you need the turning radius in order to make it work. And once again, you know, the Northwest Arterial as designed was not designed to have another full intersection on it. That's why, you know, when we look at this, it's very difficult because the median width is just not there to handle turn lanes or interchange. I mean, it's definitely not set up to have an interchange placed on it. But that J-turn is just like a protected left turn that'll be able to get you to go down the other way. And there was a detailed analysis in the document, and I think you saw that explained.
Yeah. And then in the analysis, they talk about, you know, they question whether or not it would pass a warrant for a traffic light. And I was wondering what a warrant is. Like, what does that entail? What would have to be met for that to actually occur?
And you know, and I think is Gus Ojoyes, are you on line right now, virtual?
Yeah, can you hear me, Wally?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you explain to the Zoning Advisory Commission what they mean by warrant?
Sure. This is Gus Ojoyes. I'm the city engineer. So traffic engineers have manuals that they look at, and what they do is they analyze a particular intersection, and they determine if an intersection can handle or warrant the traffic that goes through it. Now, what we did is we haven't done. Mr. Gantz has not done a traffic analysis, but we looked at the traffic that would be generated by his development, and by the fact that it only has 1,050 cars per day, a traffic analysis would not warrant a full intersection where you wouldn't be stopping 12,000 cars a day for that few of trips. So when we looked at it and when our consultant looked at it, the intersection would not warrant a signal.
Okay, thank you.
And like Wally stated, it'd be very expensive to put in there. We're talking $3.5 million plus to do an intersection because you can see that it was not designed for turn lanes, and there's a lot of widening, grading. We'd have to probably add 2 lanes on both sides to accommodate a full intersection like that. In fact, the J-turn would also be very expensive because of what would be necessary to actually accomplish that intersection.
Okay. Just a few more questions, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
So it was referenced, you know, what the comp plan has for Mosina Farms North, this property. I'm just curious what the Mosina Farms South property was listed as in the comp plan.
It was identified as single-family residential development was the future land use map for that one.
Okay. And then it was brought up, there was some discussion in the public hearing about the history of the intersection and whether or not there had been discussion about an intersection being at that place before. You guys have any extra insight or history to share about like what those might have been or?
I do know that very young in my career when I came on, Mr. Spahn was looking at development, what they call the Ehrlich Farm, which is the property to the west. There was some discussion about how access was going to go to that development. That was Olympic Heights, and there was an access coming down to 32nd Street. But I was not at that discussion level with regards to whether or not they were looking at a full connection all the way through the Northwest Arterial. Gus, I don't know, are you familiar with anything with regards to that?
Wally, I wasn't involved in that discussion. I know Bob Schissel was. I don't know if he's on the call. Yeah,
I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. This is Bob Schissel, assistant city engineer. So I do have some history on that. So back when the Iowa DOT completed the phase 4 from JFK down to Central, and the project got completed. The DOT then looked at any excess property along the corridor that they could potentially dispose of. And those are the two pieces of property on the north and south side that Mr. Gantz purchased. But during those discussions, the DOT approached us, and we collaborated together, and there was a concept or a vision for extending North Grand View from 32nd Street through the property on the south, and it would have connected to the Northwest Arterial at station 73 plus 00, and that was going to be a right in, right out only access to the Northwest Arterial. So Mr. Gantz had stated that he recalled seeing a concept for a full intersection. That was not the case. The road that was to be extended through from North Grand View to the arterial would have had right in, right out access only. And those were, again, some concept roadway extensions that the city and the DOT collaborated on. One of the things that was discussed at the time was that if a road, say North Grand View, could be extended through the property, would that make the property on the south more marketable for the Iowa DOT if they were going to sell that piece of property, if there was a kind of a platted or an established road through there. But that, you know, those concept, the concept of extending, North Grand View, it never materialized.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Well, I'll just kind of state what I'm thinking right now. I'm the first, I think, it's been talked about before. I'm the first person to say that I think, I believe that we need more housing in the city of Dubuque. However, I do wonder about the signalized intersection here. And I say that purely from the information that we received from the staff reports, both from MSA, the cost associated with that, as well as the safety concerns that MSA brought up about the fact that because of the speed that people are going, that it could actually make it less safe on the arterial there than it is now. That, I think, is a concern for me. Additionally, hearing and seeing what the DOT has provided, both with their definitions of direct access, the city attorney's information about what direct access means, and the fact that is it Class C? Is that the terminology that they use? That it was granted access at a, basically for farm equipment to come in and out of the site is very different from a development. Now, I don't want that to prohibit development from occurring here. I understand the concerns about right in, right out access and having to go up and take a U-turn or go down to Central and take a U-turn, trying to think which way you go, but going up to JFK, take a U-turn, or having to come down from the Northwest Arterial and turn around to get back into the development. But I think we have kind of two conflicting things going on here, where all the information coming at us about the safety of making that a full signalized intersection, not to mention the business impacts and the traffic impacts of adding another light. And it is a different light than other locations on the arterial, right? It's on the top of probably the steepest hill that we have there. It was mentioned that there's the one over by the McDonald's right in the Stubbs Street, but there's also significantly more traffic that comes through there because of all the businesses. There's a hotel there. There's just more, there's an Aldi's there. There's just more cars coming in and out of that than are proposed or analyzed to be coming in and out of this development. And so, I am in favor of tabling this and letting the developer and the city go back and have more discussions about this. But I do have trouble seeing myself approving a signalized intersection on the arterial purely because of both the safety and the other traffic impacts that could result from that. And I also wonder, there's been discussion about bringing developers to the table to figure out what this access looks like. I would have a real hard time voting yes for voting yes with the condition of a signalized intersection, purely because we haven't heard from the other developers in the area and what their views are on that, because presumably they would be at least party or part to paying for and being a part of that intersection. And I would like to know their views on that before we would move forward with that. So at the very least, I would like to, table it so that there's the ability for the city to bring everyone together to have that discussion and see what the interest would be for that. I could be swayed if we had all of the developers at the table together saying, yes, we're willing to do this and pay for this and make it happen, right? But I don't see that right now, and it's not that it can't happen. So long-winded here a little bit, but just to kind of state the way I'm thinking about this right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Martha, did you have anything to add?
I kind of am with Ryan. I think the best thing to do would be to table it and not give it like until next month or whatever. Give it the time allotted that it needs to have it more in-depth looked at, because if we vote on it tonight and stuff, I would be not in favor of it, because it's not in line with what everything needs to be to have the development go through.
Yeah, I'm also not in favor of a signalized intersection. We've had a lot of people here tonight admit that they're not engineers, but we have engineers telling us that a right in, right out is the best choice. So I wouldn't be in support of a signalized intersection.
Wally, can I just ask who pays for that signal?
That would have to be discussed a little bit further. There's been some discussion about what's the main purpose of the signal right now would be for access into Mr. Gantz's property. So would Mr. Gantz be responsible for 100% of the cost? That's yet to remain. That'll be a discussion that'll have to be determined about that. Because currently right now we have a development to the south as a right-in, right-out access that meets the requirements. With the intersection being put in, what's the reasoning for the intersection? Well, the reason for that would be for access into Mr. Gantz's property. But then there's question with regards, there is some benefit to the development to the south. Would they be responsible to pay for that? That would be the discussion that would have to be determined and discussed. So.
Okay.
Any other?
Can I just get some clarification on what I think Mr. Sohoya said? So he mentioned if a light does go into this portion of the arterial, that the current width isn't ideal for that. So was the width ideal in the other part of the arterial initially, or was that all modified when lights were put in for those other sections?
Gus or Bob, can you guys answer that question?
Yeah, from what I recall, go ahead, Bob, if you know more about it than I do.
So, again, just as a point of clarification, so the segment of the Northwest Arterial from Highway 20 to JFK, it was never designed as a priority one access control corridor. Thus, that allowed all of the development and all the signals and all the grade access locations to be developed along that segment. So it was never designed to be an access control corridor. Okay. Then in 1995, when the Iowa DOT was looking at doing the phase 4 of the Northwest Arterial from the JFK down to Central, at that time the decision was made, and there's an agreement between the city and the state, and I think it was because the DOT really didn't like having all of those access locations. And so they actually decided when they constructed the segment from JFK to Central that segment or that corridor would be an access control corridor. And when they purchased all of the property, they actually purchased access rights from everybody along the corridor, except at a few designated locations, specifically like the 73+00 that Mr. Gantz was referencing, where the two Type C accesses were granted. But access control rights were purchased along the entire corridor. So conversely, from Highway 20 to JFK, that segment of the arterial, it did not have access control rights. So the DOT, actually the city, back in the day when they built that in multiple phases, they did not acquire access control rights. So thus, it allowed for those various developments as you see today. And so several of those locations, and guys, you can kind of chime in here with me, but several of those locations where the intersections and signals were put in, 100% of the cost was by the developer when those signals were put in.
That's correct, Bob. My recollection is the developers paid for 100% of those signal costs and all the associated turn lanes and everything that accompany them.
But the segment from 20 to JFK again was designed differently. It was a wider roadway segment. The medians were wider, so it did allow for some of those intersection improvements to be made. But again, when the developer came in and proposed those, they were required to do the signals, do the widening, do the turn lanes. All of those required improvements.
Thank you.
Just for the record, Gus and Bob, can you state your name and your position with the city, just so we have for the minutes?
Gus Savoyas, I'm the city engineer.
Bob Schissel, assistant city engineer.
Thank you.
Any other discussion by the commission? All right, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we table the request for the zoning along the Northwest Arterial, pin 1010476002.
All right, there's a motion to table.
I'll second.
Second by Sim.
Zakara?
Aye.
Kemp?
No.
Semp?
Aye.
Christ?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye. All right. I guess that's the end of the public hearing. Let somebody else run the next one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our second item is a text amendment from the City of Dubuque. Is our applicant here?
Yes. So As the commission may recall, this was first brought before the commission for consideration at the April 5th meeting. This is a text amendment to the Unified Development Code for the evaluation of offsite impacts of subdivisions and site plan developments. At the last meeting, the commission discussed the proposed text amendment and generally expressed concerns about the amendment and what impact that might have on developers, and stated that they wished for further understanding of how the text amendment might impact projects. Due to those concerns, the commission voted to table that. Staff has placed this on this agenda. However, it's staff's request at this time to table this to a future meeting. We are further evaluating and having discussions around what those potential impacts could be, and wanting to make sure we have a little more clarity to bring back to the Zoning Advisory Commission at a later date. And that would be our request for this evening.
Very good.
Mr. Chair, with them requesting the table, I'd make a motion to table.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and we have a second
Okay.
to table.
Okay. Russell?
Aye.
Semp?
Aye.
Zaccaro?
Aye.
Kemp?
Aye.
Christ?
Aye.
And Mulligan.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Do we have any items from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any items from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Any items from staff?
Yes. So we have our City of Dubuque goal setting for the upcoming fiscal year, including in your packet. Annually, the city council holds goal setting sessions, and annually they ask for input, not only from the city departments, but all the boards and commissions. So we bring this information to the Zoning Advisory Commission with regards to, certain things. They request us to provide some of the successes that we've had in the past year. And we've kind of outlined some of those in the attached document that's included in your packet. But then also, we also have the short-term issues and projects that they would like to see the city council undertake for consideration when they look at city council goal setting. One of the recommendations that we placed on there as a zoning advisory commission is the updating our unified development code is something that's been going on. We haven't received funding on that. We have not sent out an RFP or been able to get started on that. So that is just an ongoing continued recommendation with regards to that. And so we can look at all of our existing land use plans, our comprehensive plan, and all the multiple plans that the city has with the equitable poverty reduction plan, climate action plan, and certain things. You can look at that cross-reference. Our Unified Development Code was last updated in 2009. When I say a last comprehensive update, the Unified Development Code has been updated as we do text amendments that have gone through, and we have identified some text amendments of successes that we've had for the past year for that. But this is an opportunity right now from the commission level to bring anything that they would like to see come before the city council when they talk about city goal setting sessions for that. So if you would like to add some additional information, we can definitely add it to this. If you'd like to remove, the recommendation of the Unified Development Code, we can do that. But I just recommend whatever you propose to add, then we make a recommendation to move it forward to the council. So there'll be a motion.
Sorry. I was just going to ask, do we need to decide on what these items are tonight that you bring to goal setting? Or is there time for us to review?
There is some time that we can have, you guys, if you wanted to get back to us for some additional items that you'd like to see move forward onto the city council. You most definitely could do that. You can also request to move what we have here forward, and then we can add to it at a later date. So if, say, for instance, an individual commissioner comes before us and say, hey, I'd like to see a little bit more information, we can relay that to the commission as a whole by consensus and then be able to move that forward to the council for that. So it's at the discretion of the commission.
Does anybody on the commission have any issues with the goals that have been set forth in front of you?
I have a proposal for a more specific review and update of the future land use plan. Currently, it appears to me that the future land use plan is really just a reflection of what the current land use is incorporated into a plan, which really turns out to be not a plan. So I'd like to have you guys look specifically at that.
Definitely would agree, Mr. Chair. I would definitely agree with that. Ironically, we were talking about that in our own department. The city is actually going through a sanitary sewer assessment plan, which is basically a 2-year process to identify our existing sanitary sewer needs, expansions, costs associated with that. And as a result of that, that's directly tied to our future land use map and our existing land use. So those are certain things that we've already been talking about. And that's actually one of the items that the Long Range Planning Advisory Commission has brought up as well. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I'd also like to consider adding to the goals or the short-term issues and projects, just analysis of, development in the downtown and potential for, I don't know if that's a planning department thing or if that's economic development or if it's a little bit of both, but I think it has to do with zoning and regulations there. And so adding just, an emphasis on understanding the development potential in downtown and how zoning changes could facilitate greater development in that part of the city, I think would be great. I don't know what everyone else thinks, but.
Yeah, definitely we can add that. And it is a combination of the planning, economic development, housing, and community development department, not only transportation and everything, it's a larger scale. And that is something that ironically we are also looking at independently in our office, especially since we look at the change with COVID and how it's impacted office uses. And you've just seen some come before you with regards to some of those vacant office spaces being rezoned to be able to accommodate downtown housing, which is something that's definitely being looked at. So
Great.
So pursuant to the document in front of us, are we wanting to add to that, Rich, with your comment specific to a land use map analysis? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I would like to add that to our.
So a potential motion would be the
Projects.
recommendation as is with the addition of a land use, what am I saying here? An analysis of the land use map. Is that
Future land use map.
future land? Thank you.
And
Would it be possible to include the downtown housing portion as well?
Yeah.
is that specifically tied to housing or is it multiple?
More just development in general and
Okay.
yeah.
So currently what I have written down here, Mr. Chair, is I have updated future land use map through a land use analysis and then analysis of the development in the downtown. I should say detailed analysis, just we can put that in there. Of development in the downtown.
Okay, I would entertain a motion that identifies that from one of our commissioners.
So move.
I can make a motion to approve the
You're right.
the goals and short-term plan and projects as Wally stated. Does that work?
Yes,
Okay.
we have it.
So the motion is to do what Wally says. And we're gonna second that. Very good.
same as every other month.
And-
Sheena.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Yes, Terry.
Oh, thank you. All right. Christ,
Aye.
Semp,
Aye.
Kemp,
Aye.
Zakara,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
and Mulligan.
Hi, thank you. Any other items?
That is all the, only one other item. So
Yeah.
the Planning and Zoning Commission training, I don't know if we had any input to be able to feedback. I know some members were able to attend with regards to the training. It's something that we'll annually look at doing probably once every 3 to 4 years. But Iowa State University to come in and do a planning workshop with local officials. We had our city council members, zoning board adjustment, zoning advisory commission, long range planning advisory commission members attend that training. We had about almost 30 people at the training and stuff like that. So I thought it went very, very well. As a lot of information is provided. with regards to that, and we did receive some workbooks and some information, so I'll be able to provide some of that information. For some of the members that could not attend, I'll be able to get that information out to you. But it was a great overview of just how, state law and local laws with regards to city zoning and multiple boards and commissions and how that interacts through it. So
Excellent.
that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Wally. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Motion and a second to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.